Okay, so what I've done, I just took a little piece of wood and put over the spot here. I'm going to take this piece of wire, it's got a crook on the end of it, and I'm going to put it in this hole, pull this. Now I drilled it in right here on the corner, and I'm going to use these two screws to pull this piece of drywall back to as close to the outside as I can get. Hopefully without cracking it or breaking it or anything. So I'm going to do that. It's not going to be perfect, but I just want to get it as close as I possibly can so we won't use but the smallest amount of a drywall patch. So that's our next step. So I pre-drilled all these holes, and all I'm going to do is just sink this in and pull this drywall back to me. And these are drywall screws. I wanted to open this back up so you could see exactly what I was talking about. You got to come in here and cut these little sections where it comes together. You got to cut that out enough that it'll come all the way back together. And there's a number of different ways you could patch it. You could cut this whole piece out and redo it. I chose to, since this piece was still attached, to use it because we had to get the right thickness of sheetrock to go back in it, and then we'd have to cut it, and we had to put it in, then we had to patch it, seam it, and all that kind of good stuff, which basically is the same thing we're doing here, except we don't have to cut a whole square out. So we'll pull this back up even. So I've cut all this around to get us a nice little space enough where to close, and you'll see a gap in it whenever we get it all cut and everything. And it still might not want to come exactly out to the corners, and if it doesn't, we just use the patch to fill in the gap, the patch repair stuff. So anyway, I'll put it back together and we'll start seaming the tape on it. Okay, I've mixed some mud up, and it's a dry powder. It looks like baby powder or something in the bucket, and I just get a little bucket like this. I pour some in it and I start mixing. Only thing you have to do is add water. So what I do, I just get it stirred up, and it turns into a paste. If it's real watery, you know you've got too much water in it. If it's kind of thick and pasty like this, you're okay. If you don't feel like, if you feel like it's too watery, you're going to have to add a little bit more powder to it. But it gives you the mixture ratios on it. I've mixed it up so much that I kind of just test it a little bit and get it like I want it. But it works because it's just water that you mix in here, so the water, just has to dry out of it. So what you do, you come up here and you start mudding it in. You start putting it on with your little trowel, and this little mesh gives it a place to stick to and go to. So we come in here and I try to get the little holes between here. I try to make sure that I get that mudded in real good so that it's got a bond there that'll glue it together. And I'll use a little trowel like this one to get it in there in those holes and stuff, but I have a big wide one that I'll use to smooth it out real good once I get finished with the first application of it. So that's pretty much how I get started. So we just mud this thing in, and I'll make sure that the places that are the holes are what we want to patch that. That's the whole idea. And what you'll do, there might be just a little bit of a gap difference in here, but once we smooth all this in, what you'll see is that once we get this mud in there, we can make it look just like there was never a hole in this wall. And that's our goal. So that's how we get started. We'll mud it in, get it all mudded in, and then once we get it mudded in, we'll let it dry. We're going to get it as smooth as absolutely possible though. Let it sit overnight, dry, then we'll sand that off and maybe go with another coat. We'll take this piece off. So I'm going to film the whole thing and show you from start to finish what it looks like. Okay, so this is what it looks like when you've got it roughed in. Got your first coat on it. I got a big trowel, small trowel, and I just work them together and just try to get this thing as smooth as possible before we do the sanding on it and everything. And it just takes some, you have to work this stuff because it gets dry, and the quicker you get it on there before it starts to dry, the better off you are. So, because when it starts to dry out, it really gets kind of tough to work with. So I just keep going over it and smoothing it out. And remember, you're going to come basically build this up, build it out a little bit, and then you're going to sand that off, get your corners all smoothed in, sand it off. And I've got it all put in there so that when we get it back together, when I take this piece off, it'll hold. I want this mud to hold this piece in, and the tape and all. It all will work together to make it a nice solid piece again. So anyway, that's pretty much how I do a spot like that. Not perfect, but when it's done, hopefully it will look just like you never could tell it was there. This is what our patch looks like after we've gone over it a second time. You can see the light and the darker color. The darker is the wet that we just put on for like a second coat. And what I did, I took this measuring stick, since it has a straight edge, and I just put it up here against to check the depth and make sure that I was uniform all the way across. Because you don't want to waste your materials, but you also you don't want to have it indented or out too far either. You want to get it as close as you can without takes some of the work out of it. So when you sand it, there's not that much to sand. So we get a block sander, or either a just a little piece of 2x4, piece of wood, and just fold a piece of sandpaper around it. Something that simple. Start out with something coarse and then work our way down to the fine, and we'll go fine around the edge to get it blended in, and coarse where we got some of these bumps and stuff in the middle, and get it all smoothed out. And hopefully you will not see that there was a hole in that wall at one time. The last step in this process will be to paint back over this, and luckily I've got the same matching color. I sanded it down, and all we got to do is just come back and smooth this back out, paint it back over, and we should never even know that there was a hole here once we get done. But just want to give you a good idea of how simple this whole deal really is. Not a very big deal at all. Appreciate you guys watching. Appreciate all the subscribers. Hopefully this helps someone.